Welcome to Season 3 of To Lose a Veil. I'm your host, Leslie. And again, I have my girls backing me up. That's Stephanie, Brianda, Jean, and Bonnie. This season, we expanded on previous topics with different guests.
When I'm speaking about religion, I tend to refrain from really being open simply because of some of the stuff that I discussed within my inner circle and the way that we think and kind of like what we know from research and stuff. And I find that a lot of times that when you're speaking with people who don't have the same information, they tend to brush you off or see you as, as I tell my lady, as someone who's queer from the original meaning of the word. And she said I shouldn't use that word. I said, listen, I like when people tell me I'm queer. I feel good. And then I have to tell them in the original word, it just simply means strange and different. That's all it means, before it got switched up. Like before we used to say, oh, that person's very gay, and gay back then meant that you were just happy and go lucky. And now today it has a different meaning, But I find that in order for us to really free ourselves from a lot of the dilemmas in which we're struggling with internally, we have to do a lot of research, and not just so much on the healing aspect of ourselves, but how do we get to this particular point in time? And you have to study colonialism in terms of religion, because it was that tool that was used to get us into the state in which we are in right now. And until we can dissect the fake stuff from the real stuff, we'll continue to operate in the illusional state in which we are in, fighting these internal, what they call demons, which should never be used, because you don't have internal demons within you. You have different fields of energy expressing themselves through you that is not in a hormonal state of existence. And you should actually try to learn what they are, kind of like what you were saying earlier. Learn what they are, examine them, and then try to become one with them to a point where you want to create this homeostasis, not where one's up here and the other one's down there. So we have these fields of concept, lies, and hurt and pain, and a lot of that stuff comes from our upbringing, and we got a lot of research to do.
Absolutely. Marc, you wanted to say something?
Oh, yeah. Well, you talked about the divine feminine life force energy being the physical manifestation of the thought. And we had started the conversation about sex. But then there's some relationship, I think, implicitly that you were driving towards that I wanted to point to more explicitly, which is from the masculine view, mostly femininity is viewed from the perspective of sex, but not from the perspective of the creation of life, the creation of the future of humanity. Because no matter how much we talk about the future of humanity and we talk about our vision for what we want, there's no human being walking around that wasn't born from a woman. So, Bob Marley started with no woman, no cry. There's no woman, there's nobody. So ain't nothing going on. Mm-hmm. And that aspect of it, if I looked at the more macro situation in America, at least, other places you could say women are even more diminished. But here it's a little more subtle in the way that it's done. There is a whole conversation about reproductive services being available or not available, and 90% of the people in charge of that conversation are not women. How does that construct work? Because the divine feminine voice has been conditioned to be noise. And we've got things to handle, and we don't need that noise interfering with what we need to get handled. And the first thing we're handling is, making sure we manage what you're doing and not doing. So there's a conflict in the two, and one has been so pervasive for so long that the feminine divine has a great power, but the power, it's like it works in the back of the house, but everybody's more interested in the food on the table.
That was so brilliantly said. And that's another reason that we have to have this conversation. We have to have this conversation because the women don't even feel that, because we have been conditioned under those same circumstances. So the value we have for ourselves is even diminished. I used to talk about, I did this workshop, and in this workshop, it was about the divine feminine, and I did not realize how sacred the gift of life and the birth canal were until I took this class. And then I began walking around and looking at every single thing. Plant, bee, comes through a canal, a vagina, whether you want to see it or not. The dirt becomes a vagina for the trees, for the plant. So it became so profound to me. The sacredness of life, we usher that. So how do we heal that? How do we heal the conflict between us? And do we really see that perhaps everything has been designed to keep those two aspects of the human divided?
As you all were sharing, I thought about The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. And I thought about how I was learning about the divine feminine and masculine within me. And looking at those expressions as a way to connect to the God, Olodumare, as I would call them. And I realized that I was kind of detached from the feminine. And because of that, I didn't have a full connection with the divine. And I found myself in spaces that were holy spaces, spiritual spaces, and feeling numb in those spaces. So I'm reminded of that book and that journey of expressing femininity and masculinity within myself in a way that allows me to connect with the divine. Mm-hmm. I think in the last couple of years, I've been really expressing a new form of masculinity. I now call it like patriarchal masculinity. And that conversation around the divine feminine comes up a lot. Just think this point in my life, I'm seeing more of the divine feminine expressed out of men, and ways of connecting with women, finding them wanting to connect more with women by being more expressive, by tapping into more emotions, by looking for that divine feminine God aspect.
So you would say that the feminine aspect really comes through the emotional and feeling aspect of the human being.
I think it is expressed through movement. I think the divine feminine is that nurturing aspect of us, but it's also that movement that looks like waters, that looks like waves. For me, I'm a person that's conditioned not to move, to be stiff. That has been masculine to me, to be a pillar, to be a phallus, for lack of words. When I learned about the divine feminine and femininity, what that meant, I started moving my body more.
Interesting. That same class that I took, the woman always said, she used this quote, "It is a poor society where the women don't dance." I thought that was brilliant. Like, movement is just part of the flow of energy, of life. It ebbs, it flows. The woman, the bodies, they're designed to ebb and flow. Everything. It's part of the healing too.
Yeah. Movement is a portal to heal.
To healing, yeah.
You were talking about the masculine and feminine being expressed in men more. And I think that is accurate from the men are freer to express more feminine traits, definitely with clothes. But the thing I more recently have taken note of is I don't think it's required, and I don't even know if it's possible for men to actually access the feminine energy. I think those two energies are separate. But what the harmony of it is that both can recognize in equalness to each other. So the feminine and the masculine in a condition of equalness can partner with each other, with each other's strengths. One creating life, the other one protecting life, versus one dominating and one fighting off domination. So I think there's just a balance in that sense, but no need for an integration, because the integration, I'm not convinced I have any ability to integrate or tap into my feminine unless we reduce it to fashion, dancing, which is, definitely it's considered or felt to be more feminine to dance, but I think you can be very masculine in dance. So kind of wanted to separate the two things about those energies.
Interesting.
When you say that you don't have the ability to integrate, you're speaking for yourself personally.
Yeah, I have.
And why? I'm wondering why do you for yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, because I had someone speak to me once about communicating with their autistic child, and I made the mistake of saying, "I really get that must be challenging," and she started to continue about the challenges of it, and I said, "Hold on, I think I made a left turn when I said I understand what it's like for you to deal with an autistic child. I have a concept of what it's like. I have a strong held series of beliefs about what it's like to have to repeat yourself, to have to make everything accommodate someone who can't use it the way it's meant to be designed to be used, and figure out how to make life work for this human being that's in a world that's not designed for them." And as soon as I saw all of that, I saw anything I think about what it is speculative. So I don't want to grab onto my speculation as a authentic experience of what's happening for someone else. But the masculine energy, I have an authentic first-hand account. When I hear a man dealing with issues of finances, relationships, family, in the whole spectrum, from I don't care about my family at all to if anyone threatens my family, that'll be the last time they threaten anything. That whole spectrum, I have a visceral, actual connection to it. When I think about feminine energy, it's only speculative to me.
Mm-hmm. So if we went back to the concept that it's consciousness and energy, the feminine is the life force, the feeling aspect of the consciousness. Can you relate to your feelings, and do you spend time thinking or talking or feeling, or do you just, because you just use everything from this consciousness level and just think everything through, as opposed to feeling what's going on in the moment?
Yeah, I think it's more that the feelings are driven by masculine energy.
Interesting.
I'm more likely to protect, defend than to nurture. That's one of the aspects I think is more of a feminine energy. Strategize versus collaborate. Uh, yeah, those feelings are there, but I don't think they the feminine aspects of them don't carry the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
As you share, I think about like the conditioning that I talked about within myself, and how for me, like certain movements that I do, certain ways that I have my hair, like those are feminine aspects. Um, I think that I'm conditioned to express masculinity in a certain way, and that those conditionings have limited myself from being expressive and from looking uh, at how much more I can relate to women and their experience. I can empathize with women. I can't say that I know what your experience is. I can walk the street at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and have a totally different experience um, as a man than a woman can. And I can empathize with the fear that they might go through putting themselves in that situation. Um, but I don't know what that is because I have the privilege not to know. And I think sometimes when we have that privilege, we sometimes have a veil over our eyes, and we can't see that we're much more than we're conditioned to be. I believe I'm much more than just the protector, and I feel like when you said protector, I thought about the word machismo. Machismo is used often to describe toxic masculinity, but machismo is actually the word that the Tainos associate with protection. Like that masculinity that is our expression of protection to protect what is beautiful and sacred, and that usually is women. Not that women need protection, right? But we are, for me, in my opinion, by design, created to protect. Our anatomy, how we're built, how we look, our frame, right? It's all meant to utilize strength in certain ways. However, I think that the society we live in and the century we live in the last probably 10,000 years have conditioned us to be detached and to look at women as an othering. Um, and I think more than ever now it's time to really start really looking at those aspects of women that we've been locked away from.
Yeah, it's interesting. Also, just in listening to you speak, and also looking at the way this society here in the West, it's also done a harsh thing for the feminine too, in terms of allowing ourselves to be protected and allowing ourselves to be the people who nurture and take care and do it in a way. It's almost like this society has created this split between us that makes us also have to go out and be a little bit more patriotic because we have to raise children by ourselves, because we have to work, we have to earn a living. And so that's another aspect that has split us in terms of the way it should work. Everybody working in harmony. So I think that's important too, because we kind of hurt about that too. We kind of heard about, would you like to stay home and not work? Would you like to take care of? When I take care of, am I in my glory? Because that's what I do best, because that's part of the femininity. Not to say that I couldn't organize, not to say that because women who stay home and have 20 kids, what do they have to be? They have to integrate certain real calculations and male configurations in order to keep that house running smooth. So there is a combination of both those aspects in that place. So yeah, I think that was great.
I'll say one more thing about the nurturing aspect. An example like at work, more often than not, if you have a staff meeting, in the preparation or putting things away, it's the women that jump and do that work. So for me, that's an aspect of nurturing, of taking care. So they're used to being in that role, and I'm not used to being in that role. So I'm not the nurturer, the carer. So I allow them to do that work. But that's a little bit of BS. I can consciously say, let me do this. Let me step up, because it's in me too to be a caregiver and be nurturing to people.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's what society in this conditioning. It's like you get a pass, because if you were a woman sitting there just going, I'm going to allow them, right? Somebody might say something.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh, there's a pass for that.
Yeah. I think it's a trap too. I really think the whole concept is being used in terms of masculine and feminine. It's a tool to divide us even more. Because with my lady, right? Because I'm not working now, but with my lady, I watch the grandchildren when she has to go out. Okay, I cook. I like cooking. When the 2-year-old makes the crap and there's nobody there to clean it, I clean it. Right? When me and my lady go out to an event, I'm looking at the environment in which she's about to walk into, because in my mind, I have to protect her the best as I can. So what does that make me? Does it make me, which one does it make? We encapsulate both of them. And in the male and the female aspect, there's just different variations of what it is that this creative source does. But we encapsulate both of them. I think that once we start clinging completely to one, we do a great disservice, and we create this victim mentality within ourselves. I grew up in a time, I'm 64. I grew up in a time where in the 60s and 70s, that's all we did was dance. We had no problem with it, You turn on Soul Train, you can see the guy, and that was California somewhere. So we didn't dance like that in New York. So I was like, and those who are laughing, they know, they're like, what they doing? But that was just what they did out there. But I'm saying that we dance. And yes, being under the rulership of this European monarchy, monarchy, whatever you call it, we're in trouble. We don't know who we are. We don't know what role to play with each other. And I'm going to be careful, because I know the time that we're living in, right? The men and the women both are confused, I would say, as they try to find out where they belong. It's an upside down reality which we're living in. In terms of family, the family structure is the way it is, not because, you have, the people are bad. It's because it's been designed to be this way. And for those who don't know, in the 60s, when the brothers stood up and they said, you're not coming in our neighborhood with the guns and drugs. Mm-hmm. That's not happening here, Of course, those who designed the society said, we got to figure out how we can deter that, because we can't have them running around with guns, threatening us who have guns, who have to maintain this law and order. I'm talking about the government, okay? Mm-hmm. Talking about the 60s movements with the Panthers and stuff. This is real. So they had to comprise a program where they can begin to demonize and strip the males of their natural order and power to protect those who they're supposed to protect, who are not as masculine as they are. And that was the women and children. But also with that, what they had to do to facilitate this horrible thing to lead to where we are today is to convince the women, you don't need him. We'll give you what you need. Mm. We'll provide you with food. We'll provide you whatever it is that you need. Okay? But since we're going to provide you with what it is that you need, because it's all about, you have to demasculate the man, because the man is the first line of defense when it comes to the home, when it comes to the village. It's the first line of defense. So you have to remove them so that you can then penetrate wherever it is that you want to get into. So then if we're going to provide you with everything we need, you can't have them in the house. Hmm. So we're going to give you welfare, whatever it is, and this, you can look this up. It's there.
We know that.
If we're going to give you whatever it is that you need, When we come and we do our investigation and we look in the closet and we look under the bed, we're not looking to see how tidy you are. We're looking to see if there's anything in there that represents a man. Because if you have a man in the house, it's going to be a problem for us to be able to conquer you. Then in the 80s, when they became, well, the 60s, when they decided they wanted to really break things down further, they gave you heroin. Okay? We go to the 40s, but that's too far back. But they gave you heroin. Okay? And they glorified it. And they gave you the pimps. Okay? Then they degraded the black woman and they gave you, not all the sisters was like that, but they gave you the ones in the hot pants, the hookers. And then they just barrage you mentally with this, and your kids are watching this. Then they said, we got to up the game. So we're going to give them the next, because it's about destroying the family and a natural fabric that holds everything together. 80, let's give them crack cocaine. So, so what does crack cocaine have to do with what's going on now? If you look at the timeline from when they introduced these things, it's almost with a 20 years span, 20-year difference. 80, 90, 2000. You look at the kids that are running around today, a lot of them are byproducts of children who were born up in the crack era. I'm not making this up. This is statistics. You can find it. You can look, it's there.
Thank you so much for being here today. We've had an amazing conversation, and we just want to wrap everything up and tell you to come back and see us again. So we're out. Have a good week.